Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chicago Reacts. My name is Kelsey, and I'm an actor and voice actor living in Chicago, if you didn't already know. And today, I will be reacting to High Fleet Review. Photosensitive TM Seizure TM Edition TM by Seth Zintak. So, those of you out there who are photosensitive, this is the Seizure Edition, it would seem. So, keep that in mind. Don't say we didn't warn you. Before we start today, though, I want to go ahead and talk about our Twitch VOD channel. So we're on Twitch. If you watch this channel, you've probably heard someone talk about the fact that we're on Twitch, because guess what? We are. But if you ever miss a stream, like I know, Kira and Kit usually stream later in the day. So for Americans, unless you're watching at work, which you are, hi. Like that's great for Americans. But Michael, Zach, and I stream earlier in the day, which might conflict with some people's work schedules. So if you miss a stream, or if you don't want to deal with Twitch for whatever reason and want to see what's going on in our streams, you can check out our YouTube channel, which is just our Twitch VOD channel. All the streams are uploaded there. So link is in the description. Go check that out. Check out our antics. Yeah. All right, let's go.
Hey people, epilepsy warning. I'm serious. You have about 3 seconds.
Whoa.
Now that all the epileptics are either dead or convulsing, let's have a pleasant time.
He was not kidding.
Is described as a fleet carrier sim, programmed entirely inside an ice fishing shack by a single Russian man.
Я верю в Иисуса Христа.
Personally, I describe it as an immersive trauma sim because the hardest part isn't the combat. It's staying calm when all your senses are drowned out by the scream of gunfire. The game takes place on the fictional desert planet of Kazakhstan. After a messy political revolution, rebel forces have taken over. You play as Grand Duke Mark Sayati Solemsky, who is tasked by the Russian Emperor himself, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, to restore order. Unfortunately, our forces to the south got glassed by thermonuclear warheads, so you could say it's not going too well. Our last-ditch effort is to push north towards the rebel-controlled city of Khiva. Our objective? A plutonium reactor the size of a city, responsible for the vast majority of power generation across the planet. The hope is, once we capture it, the enemy will have to surrender, or at least negotiate a truce. However, you're vastly outnumbered, outgunned, and flat out broke. But first, let's get to the controls. Your word of the day, skeuomorphism. Every part of a UI looks like the real-world equivalent of what it's meant to represent. On the map, you're looking top-down from the cockpit, which is crammed with whatever communications devices you've got installed. This may look overwhelming, but compared to an actual Soviet cockpit, it's comparatively simple. Generally, if you make visual contact, it's already too late. The enemy has already spotted our chemtrail, so there's no point acting innocent, which is why we use all of this shit. At the top left, you've got your radar. Reliable, accurate, and high resolution. The good radar, also known as the overpriced radar, has a range of 700 kilometers. Check this out. Not only does it locate, but if I make contact, mark it on the map, and maintain course for exactly an hour, I can mark the new position, take a ruler between the 2 points, and find out the velocity and bearing of a signal.
That ruler.
But you have to send radio signal to receive it, which means if you see them, they can definitely see you. So sometimes the best option is
also
to turn
the rules of hide and seek.
Panicking.
Thermal signature detected.
Unfortunately, this sound means our infrared search and track system is working correctly. What does this mean? It means there's a ballistic missile coming towards us, and since infrared is low range at 300 kilometers, it also means brace yourself. In contrast, electronic intelligence, or ELINT, works off passive radar emission, so it's undetectable, long range, and looks like a fucking pretend phone for kids. It's very intuitive. I look at it, see the flashing red light which says, alert, danger close, and I look away, trying to guess whatever the hell that means.
Pretend I do not see it.
There's the radar jammer. You can click it for stress relief, because it doesn't do anything. Imagine getting shot dead in a street, an experience that many Americans can relate to. But as the bullet approaches, you can briefly simply become invisible. This amazing ability allows you to sneak away from the approaching bullet. However, the only problem is that bullets are typically much faster. Finally, you've got the radio, which intercepts radio transmission in real time. You'll have to dial in the correct frequency, tune the signal, and get a bearing on its direction. You only get a short window of time to do this before you lose the transmission. Even if you get it, surprise, it's usually encrypted. Even if you decrypt it, surprise, it's literally a trucker asking for gas. Every single time. The tactical knowledge of where every trucker stops to urinate is vital to the success of your campaign. There's also
so it actually matters.
To the top right. Those are buttons to commit war crimes, and if you flick the switch, you can control the number of atrocities you'd like to commit. Finally, I can actually talk about the game. In this game, Modern Warfare has done away with tanks and aviation. Instead, we fly gigantic 30,000-ton blocks of steel.
That's a good vibe.
2,000 cubic tons of pressurized methane every 1,000 kilometers, with a carbon emission rating between who cares and it's probably gonna get warmer. Every ship is unique and complementary to the rest of your fleet, which you pick at the start of a campaign. Every ship piece is modular, which can be swapped out and modified as you see fit. There's no safety or hand-holding, so by all means, detach the bridge from your flagship, tumble to your death, and lose the game. But if you can resist the urge of destroying or selling your flagship, we should get moving, because it's only a matter of time before some Soviet babushka alerts the authorities. So start your engines and pick a destination. Whatever your choice, expect heavy resistance. To make matters more complicated, you can't just send your flagship, because it's a fat, heavy piece of shit that tops
like
out
that
at
the
90
ships are all like
kilometers an hour.
rectangles.
Why is this an issue? Because the enemy will spot us, raise the alarm,
they're in the
and
air.
send every strike
Something's
fleet to our
working.
location. Pro tip, if you start hearing this music, you're already dead, which is why I usually just dismantle my flagship into a 2x2 cardboard box and fly it into the desert. I
just
can't
do that in
lose
midair?
if I can't be found. So instead, we send a strike group ahead of the main fleet to kill everyone before they can scream for help. Combat is very simple. You take your diazepam, stare at the drywall for 10 minutes, and return to the PC. Then watch as you get locked on by 3 different ships. It's a trial by fire, but eventually you'll get the hang of it. Typically, you fill your magazine, unload on the enemy, and try to live long enough to reload. And yes, you always fight 1v3. Get used to it. And yes, depending on the weather and time of day, you're going to see a lot of rain. Conversely, you're not going to see much else. Think of every ship in this game as a
Lots of
crab.
rain?
Punch through its exoskeleton, and there's nothing but soft, tender flesh. The slightest crack in its armor, the slightest puncture in its crusty.
You're
and
done.
You'll devour the whole thing. There's a structural diagram of whatever ship you're targeting on the bottom right.
Thank
you can
goodness.
use this to figure out the weak points of any high-altitude crustacean. Fun fact, pressurized methane is very explosive. Locate their fuel tanks, set them on fire, and the chain reaction will usually blow the whole ship. Do you need to know
More
anything
bright
else?
lights.
No. Is there long-term health consequences to flying a ship that knocks out the pilot each time I make a turn? Yeah, probably. But afterwards, there's a lot of burning debris and human bodies that you have to mop up before we can properly land. You're on a limited timer, and you can't save everything, or everyone, because the game will automatically try to save crew members trapped inside the debris. However, those aren't mine. I should know, because I don't build evac pods on my ships. Think about it. The Titanic would have never crashed if it had no life vessels. If the passengers had no option for retreat, they'd plug the hole with their bloated carcasses and save the day. So instead, I switch to manual and write off those casualties as fatalities. First, we secure the fuel and munitions, because if they burn, they explode, taking our payday along with it. Then check your options. Crew quarters contain souvenirs for recruiting potential
Gold
allies.
elephant.
Captain's quarters contains clues to the location of aforementioned allies. Useful, but not essential. Radio room gives a piece of a current encryption key. Absolutely, totally, and completely worthless. If you know a single keyword, you can decrypt the entire transmission. That leaves us with the only thing that actually matters. Spare parts we can strip down and sell for money. Gun parts, missiles, radars, aircraft. Whatever it is, it's worth a lot of cash back in town. If they got that money symbol, it's time to harvest as quickly as possible. Sometimes there's a hazard warning, which means a 50% chance of horrific accident if you don't put on protective gear. But that takes time, and I don't have a lot of time, but I do have a lot of expendable, replaceable human beings.
Money?
You know what they say? You can't cook an omelet without breaking health and safety. After your profitable
burning
cleanup,
insulation.
you can open the hatch.
Yikes.
Welcome to town. It's a fucking dump, but sometimes it rains. It's the only moment of serene tranquility you'll ever get in this game. Usually, there's a random event which influences the worldview and politics of your crew depending on how you respond. For example, your men start taking slaves from the captured enemy captives. What do you do? Option 1, slavery bad, no slavery. Option 2, slavery good, receive 5,000 credits. Option 3, slavery good, but not efficient. Assign a slavery officer to oversee and optimize slavery, receive 10,000 credits. Choices are not made equal.
I love
Some
big
are
coat
straight
memes.
up better. At some point in the game, rising nuclear ash keeps dropping the temperature. Your general tells you the men are freezing to death, suggesting that you
got
keep
those
the car
coats,
engine
though?
running and burn a small amount of fuel even if you're currently parked. If you agree, temporary plus free morale bonus to all of your men, and a permanent drain on fuel supply for the rest of the game. If you say no, absolutely nothing happens. It's never brought up again. World View is used for skill checks along the story and for charismatic negotiation with Tarkans, former Russian generals who are currently in hiding from rebel forces.
Don't have a
Appeal
ponytail?
to their sense of morality, give them a nice Funko Pop, and they just might join your campaign, so that I can immediately sell their ship for market
Bargaining
value.
chips in
This
the
involves
future.
giving a speech, the effect of which is specific to each character's sensibilities. Mainly, I just rant about how much I fucking hate the poor and how much money we're gonna make after we shove the gun barrel of democracy down the collective throats of a current government. My impassioned speech is often very convincing. Tarkans are valuable assets, which can be called up during the campaign to ask for a small loan of 10,000, repeatedly until they no longer pick up. A city is effectively a gas station. We drop into the Gazprom depot to get scammed by shitty gas prices by some dude wearing a sack. Every gas station
by
also
literally a
comes equipped with
Tuscan
shipworks
Raider
for ship installation and repair. You can do this undocked at low speed, but for serious repairs, you're gonna have to manually land the ship. Welcome to parking, the quickest and most frequent cause of a game over.
For sure.
Much like jumping down a flight of stairs without legs, do not attempt to do this without landing gear. And remember to park your flagship responsibly. Sometimes it'll count balancing off a cliff as
the amount
a
of fire coming
valid
out of that
parking
thing.
spot. You'll return to the town screen only to see your flagship tumble and crash into the abyss. Also, for some reason,
it didn't
after
explode
parking
though.
your ship, you can still control it. You might think it's a bug, but it's never been fixed, so I suspect it's working as intended. Moving on, every gas station has an in-store self-checkout to legally purchase special munitions to be used against the same government that sold it to me. Compatibility depends on weapon caliber. For reference, the smallest caliber in this game is a 37mm machine gun. This goes up to 180mm, which is the size of your average artillery. And there's no option for weapon groups, so typically we fire every single gun at the same time. As far as I care, there's only two types of ammo: armor piercing and proximity fuse. The former for cutting up ships, and the latter for chopping up aircraft. The rest is a complete meme. Incendiary starts fires, which implies that 2,000 cubic tons of burning methane just wasn't enough. And laser guided
things
lets you
seem
do
to like to
this.
explode here in this game.
Honestly, I really do like it, but when I remember that I'm effectively shooting money, my brow begins to sweat and I start to feel nauseous. Besides that, there's a bunch of bombs, missiles, and rockets you can use to airstrike the enemy.
Just sitting in a warehouse all together.
With that out of the way, you should remember that any military campaign is largely financial, and that the most
on the
beautiful
ground,
phrase in the
no
Russian
less.
language is "Дай мне твои деньги, пожалуйста." We are going to intercept trade convoys, murder their escort, and capture the trade ships so we can hold them for ransom. Because we're the good guys. God is with us on this campaign, and thus piracy is absolutely ethical, encouraged, and the best way of making money, hands down. Besides selling ballistic nuclear weapons on the open market. Speaking of
on the
ballistic
open
nuclear
market,
weapons, why haven't we used them yet? Because, as your general puts it, once the genie's out of the bottle, it's never going back inside. But I'm okay with that, because I only have one wish to make. I wish for a nuclear winter.
Oh boy.
The death of one is a tragedy, but the death of millions is a good start. However, in retrospect, this wasn't the best idea. You see, we didn't use them because we couldn't. We didn't use them because they have more than us. Considerably more. And right now, They're heading towards us. So, word of advice, they won't touch the button as long as you don't. You can start the nuclear war, but they're going to finish it.
Is that the in-game sound effect, or is that something he's adding in? Because that's wild if it's the in-game sound effect.
Finally, if you actually want to win the game, pre-built ships aren't good enough. You have to make your own. You do this by clicking Shipworks in the main menu.
Blocks.
Unfortunately, the latest patch has removed the background sound effects because somebody kept complaining. Luckily, I still have my old copy, so I can still tune in to the soothing ASMR of a Middle Eastern repair shop. Here's some of the projects I made after stealing and taking credit for them from a friend. The block, the brick, the cock and ball accelerator, which generates torque directly from the phallus, the box, the Death Star of David, work in progress, the windmill of friendship, footage missing, the fly swatter, also known as the make shit crash, because enemies will desperately try to avoid mid-air collision, which instead makes them crash into the ground. The when you run out of ammo, you become the ammo, the why did I make this, and many more.
I love that
Eventually,
one.
I realized
that's
that
a good
armor
one.
plates are functionally no different to reinforced hull pieces, except they weigh 3 times as much. So I made this abomination. It can take out every strike fleet in the game back to back with no breaks. I can literally sit
That
in the
thing's
first
ridiculous.
town, wait until Grandma calls the Gestapo, and watch as the entire rebel military explode in front of me. I love this game, which brings me to my main critique. There's not enough, and I want more. It's like a slice of cake that I want, but I can't have, because I can't legally imprison the developer until he bakes the aforementioned cake. Unless I somehow invite him over on false pretenses, burn his passport, and cuff him to the work table. Hypothetically, of course. Also, if you're worried about epilepsy, just know that modern copies of the game have been sanitized for your delicate eyes. You can set your preference in the options menu. Thanks to all the seizure complaints, Glitch High is now just a bunch of fuzzy lines. But on release, Glitch High was the equivalent of burning out your cornea with a radioactive lens flare. It was actually even funnier because the options used to be flipped. So you'd set it to Glitch Low, which would actually be Glitch High.
Oh my gosh.
Both your retinas
mean trick
to function and die. If you're interested, you can grab a copy on Steam, or you can physically steal it by cutting the fiberglass cables outside your house and intercepting the individual packets of light. As always,
go do that.
Hopefully more often, so stay tuned. A warm thanks to the many members of the Merchants Guild generously funding and bankrolling these videos. You're all truly wonderful. Have a good one.
Okay, loved that video at the end. Wow, that's a lot of bright lights and a lot of like sitting in a cockpit, pushing buttons and doing simple math. Not my kind of game personally, but I can appreciate like the the ridiculous stuff you can make with it, like the floating like cages and blocks that just is like, you know what? You meant for me to play this game one way, but how would I do this? How would I just make like a giant swinging thing that like hits everyone out of the sky? How would I do that? You know what? In Hive Fleet, you can do that. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me today. If you liked this video, be sure to like it, and you can also subscribe to our channel for more content like this. See you next time.